With the 15th pick and with the 26th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sisterin. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Luke. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report Live. Redskins make another free agent acquisition, kind of fits into Ron's plan. Ron's plan, as I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, another one-year deal, essentially a prove-it deal, 1 year, $4 million for Ronald Darby, a corner that we know very well, played in our division, in our backyard with the Philadelphia Eagles the last few years, won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles back in 2017, has never played in 16 games in his career. All right, he's been in the league since 2015, never played in 16 games for various reasons. You know, not always injury, but the last 3 years in particular in Philadelphia, hasn't played in 16 games due to injury. So that was something that was one of my concerns. I had a Redskins fan hit me up I'd say about a week and a half ago, maybe right around the time of free agency getting underway. And he asked me, was I interested in Ronald Darby? Would I be really cool with the Redskins going after Darby? And I'm like, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm not a big fan of Ronald Darby. Not because of the talent or lack thereof. The guy's very talented. Eagles fans will even tell you this. He's talented. The problem is he can't stay healthy. And we've seen enough of that in Washington that has made me sour to the idea of bringing on a Ronald Darby. But again, if it's a one-year deal, as is the case here, I'm more open to that, because if it doesn't work, guess what you can do? Similar to Clinton Dix, even though I wasn't a fan of the trade necessarily when the Redskins made it, but it was one of those situations where you bring a guy in, and I hated the fact that the Redskins gave up a draft pick for Clinton Dix in the middle of the season when I didn't feel like we needed to address the safety position, but they did. And you remember Jay Gruden was not a fan of Clinton Dix. He loved Monte Nicholson and did not like that trade, and the Redskins gave up draft capital to get him. But that's nor here nor there. It was a one-year experiment with Clinton Dix, even though the Redskins and Bruce Allen tried to double down on his mistake by offering him more money than the Bears did in free agency last year. And he decided to go to Chicago because he didn't want to come back here. But it was a one-year mistake, and he was able to mosey on. And, you know, it's, again, with most of the moves made by the Redskins in this offseason, all right, and now this gets the Redskins up to 12 free agent acquisitions this offseason. With all the moves made, all of them are low-risk, high-reward propositions. If they don't work, the Redskins aren't on the hook for a ton of money. And this is the difference between when Bruce Allen, because I've read a lot of your comments where you're talking about the Redskins are doing it again. They're doing the same Bruce Allen bullshit where you're going out and you're getting all of these low-grade free agents. You're bringing them in, and it hasn't changed. And here's where I beg to differ. Look, these guys that they're bringing in, unlike the guys Bruce Allen was bringing in, those guys were veterans. You know, there were a couple of guys in there that, for the most part, were looking to prove themselves. But a lot of times, Deshaun Golson and those types of guys, Kendall Reyes, these are veterans that were in the league. These guys that we're bringing in, most of them are young. Ronald Darby's 26 years old. It's not like this guy is old. Every one of these free agents, with the exception of Thomas Davis, for the most part, are young players that we're bringing in here with a chance to prove themselves. Now, again, low risk, high reward propositions in just about every one of these situations. If these guys pan out and they're still relatively young, guess what? If it's a one-year deal, you can bring them back. Or in the case of Eric Flowers, like we did last year, if he gets more money out on the free agent market than we're willing to pay, sayonara, nice knowing you. But it's just like that Eric Flowers situation. Low risk, high reward proposition. If it works, you feel good about potentially bringing them back. If they get more money out there on the market than you're willing to pay, you value them at a certain amount, and someone else is willing to pay them more, then you say, you know what? Good for you. And that's what I said to Eric Flowers. Good for you, man. All right. But if it doesn't work, all right, if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum and it doesn't work, it's a 1-year deal. Okay. A lot of these are 1-year deals. Some of them are 2. You know, in the rare instance this offseason with the Wes Schweitzer or Kendall Fuller, that's Schweitzer's deal is a 3 and Fuller's is a 4. Outside of those guys, not many have gotten multi-year deals. You've got a couple of 2-year deals, but most likely than not, the Redskins can probably get out after 1 if they so choose. You know, in the case of a Peyton Barber or a J.D. McKissick, I'm pretty sure if the Redskins wanted to cut those guys at training camp before their guarantees kick in, they probably could cut those guys and wouldn't really suffer much of a penalty for doing so. So again, low risk, high reward propositions by the Skins. Darby is a talented corner. There's no mistaking that. My problem with him has been his injury history. In 2017, this is a guy that only played in 8 games. Now, he did ultimately come back in the postseason and help them win a chip versus the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. But he missed half the season during the regular season with an ankle injury, all right? 2018, the following year, only played in 9 games because he tore his ACL. All right, came back in 2019, was relatively healthy, played most of the season, but still missed 5 games due to a hip injury and was put on IR late in the season. So again, this is a guy that has suffered through some injuries in his brief NFL career. So if he's able to stay healthy, the talent is undeniable, okay? But he hasn't been able to stay healthy. That's been his bugaboo, which was my issue with bringing him in initially when free agency started. But if you're going to ask me, looking at the way our cornerback situation is set up right now, if you're going to ask me if I'm going to be picky right now with Ronald Darby being on the football team on a 1-year, $4 million deal, I'd tell you, hell no. Bring him in. All right, let's see what he's got. See if he can stay healthy. And if he does, he'll hit the market again next year, probably make a lot more money. Maybe it'll be here. Maybe it'll be somewhere else. But again, you got to be able to give guys an opportunity to compete. And that's what Ron is doing. And Ron's plan is to have these guys compete and may the best man win. Simple as that. The best guys will rise. The others will not. They'll sink, and we'll keep the guys that rise to the occasion most likely than not. And you'll move forward with those guys. So more competition at a position that was desperate and starving for more depth. All right. Don't know if Darby comes in and starts right away. My guess is that he has a legitimate shot to start right away, because I still contend that Kendall Fuller is a nickel. I didn't think we had a guy to start opposite Fabian Moreau. And that even sounds funny coming out of my mouth, starting opposite Fabian Moreau. Okay, even though I like what Fab did at the end of the season, it's still funny saying that a guy has to come in to start opposite of Fab Moreau. Think about that for a second. Fab Moreau is probably going to start at one of our cornerback positions right now. All right, so I look at Darby as a guy that's going to start outside for us most likely than not. Fab Moreau probably on the other side. And let's face it, the nickels, they pretty much start now. Most teams are coming out in 3 wide receiver sets. So I see Kendall Fuller pretty much being on the field, and the Redskins have him designated right now as a cornerback, in case you were wondering. And I told you, when they went out and signed Sean Smith, most likely than not, that signaled the fact that the Redskins viewed Kendall Fuller as a cornerback and not a safety, but his versatility gives them options on the field in case of an emergency, or if they have some packages where they feel like they'll be better served having him on the field as a safety and not as a nickel. Either way, I got one more thing to say, and then we'll get to some comments. I see some super chats, so we'll get to those here in a second. But I know a lot of people wanted to see Bashaud Breeland come back to DC. That was something that was mentioned a ton of times, and, you know, I wasn't opposed to it, but there's a reason he's sitting out there. I've always, and I've said this to you guys, I think I said it on this past week's program. There's a reason no one has wifed up Bashaud Breeland. Why every time you look, he's the side piece. Whether it's in Green Bay, whether it's in Kansas City, or now he's sitting out there. No one has put a ring on his finger. No one's put a contract in his face. He's always the side piece. There's a reason. All right, now, whatever that reason is, I don't know. Maybe his demands right now don't meet where the market is, And he thinks he should be paid more than, because again, Ronald Darby could still be sitting out there, but he decided he wanted to come back home because he's from the area. He wanted to come back home and play for a 1 year, $4 million deal to prove it. And then again, relatively young. If he tears it up this year, plays exceptional football, he goes back into the market as a 27-year-old free agent cornerback. And we saw how good these cornerbacks got paid this offseason. I talked about it on the podcast. In case you haven't had a chance, check out the newest episode of the Louis T Network podcast. I dropped it on Friday. Okay. Talked about free agency in depth. I talked about the Redskins a ton in that podcast, including Ron Rivera on a Carolina radio station. Had some interesting things to say. I discussed that as well. So check out the podcast if you haven't had a chance to do so already. But I don't think Breeland is coming here. I think this deal that Ronald Darby just signed doesn't necessarily end any hope of Bashaud Breeland coming here, but it makes it very unlikely that Bashaud Breeland comes here as a free agent acquisition for the Redskins. And again, Bree isn't looking for a 1 year prove it deal. He feels like he proved it last year in Kansas City, helping them win a Super Bowl and getting an interception in the Super Bowl, making a big play burst the Patriots in the regular season. He feels like he's already proved it. He proved it in Green Bay. He felt like he proved it in Kansas City. He felt like, and now he's looking to cash in. You heard what he said heading into free agency. I want what I feel like I deserve. He's not looking for a 1 year, $4 million deal. He's not looking for a 2 year, $10 million prove it deal. He's looking for not top of the market, but he's looking for double digits in terms of annual salary. And he's looking for a multi-year contract that he can feel like he's getting a little bit of stability with. He's not looking for a 1 year deal. That's what the Redskins are offering right now, 1 and 2 year deals. So the likelihood of Bashaud Breeland coming here, slim to none. Doesn't close the door totally on it. It's slightly ajar, but this closed it pretty damn close. It's almost shut. So Bashaud Breeland most likely not coming back to DC, but the Redskins are going to kick the tires on Ronald Darby and see if he can stay healthy and perform at a level that we know he's fully capable of, but health is the key. So let's get to some super chats. I think I have a few of those here, and I want to get to some of them. So let's read those. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciated, Trevor. My man Trevor writes, first super chat. Hey, HTTR. Thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. Brandon McCloskey, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciated, Brendan. Thank you for the super chat. Brendan writes, what's good, Louis? Hashtag in Ron we trust. Hashtag trust the process. And that's where I am right now. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Hashtag trust the process. Hashtag in Ron we trust. That's where I am with this whole situation. You know what I mean? A lot of Redskins fans. I've read so many comments. I've been hit up on Twitter so many times with people that are frustrated with the way the Redskins have approached free agency. And my response to them is, in Ron, I trust. I want to see this thing through. I want to see where this goes. I think I know what Ron's plan is. I've already told you. I've laid that out for you. However, I want to see it in action. All right. It's one thing to actually draft a plan. It's another thing to go out and execute it. I want to see what this looks like on the field as a finished product. So this is a process. I think some fans lose sight of that this is, in fact, hashtag trust the process. This is, in fact, a process. This is not an overnight quick fix. The Redskins aren't going to go from 3-13 to 13-3. If you feel that way, you're delusional is what you are. All right. Just like last year, I tried to convince Redskins fans we're not going to be very good. Now, I didn't see 3-13 coming. I'm not going to sit here and act as if I predicted 3-13. But I told you, I saw 5-11, 6-10 coming our way. I mean, it looked like a 97-mile-an-hour fastball that I knew was coming. And I loaded up on that thing and I knocked it out of the park. I saw that one coming a mile away. I don't see the Redskins being terrible in the upcoming season, if there is, in fact, a season, which I do think is going to take place. But I don't think they're going to be, 10-6. They're not. I don't think they're going to be 9-7 even. Okay, 8-8 is probably the ceiling for Ron Rivera in year one, and I'm okay with that. And I know some of you are like, man, you're setting your your bar too low and you're setting the expectations. And this is what happens when you've been a fan of an organization that's been so bad for so long. You start allowing your expectations to be lowered. These aren't, this isn't a situation of lowered expectations. This is not that. I'm assuring you of that. I understand that this is a process. And in process, there's steps you have to take. Just like a baby has to first learn how to get their head up and then get the motor skills right. And then they got to learn how to crawl, roll over. Now that they can control rolling over, now they got to learn how to get up on their knees. All right. Now they got to learn how to crawl. And then they finally get up and get the balance and they get the strength to stand up. And now they got to get over the fear of falling down when they stand up. And now they got to start trying to take those steps, those first steps. And now all of a sudden they're walking. Now they want to run. But you can't skip steps. You can't go from, hey man, let me get up on my knees and learn how to crawl to, hey, I'm about to start running. That's not how it works. You can't skip steps. There are steps to this. This is a process. And I think right now Ron is in the portion of the process where he's trying to figure out who's going to buy in. Who are the guys that we're going to build this thing around moving forward? And you keep adding pieces to figure out who these guys are going to be. So I'm with you on that, Brendan. Thank you for the super chat. Captain Gaming, thank you for the super chat. Captain Gaming, greatly appreciated. Captain Gaming says, I'm loving the 1-year deals. Could free up lots of money for next year with guys like Jalen Ramsey. See the Redskins going after somebody like that. Again, Ron is trying to develop a culture, but as I alluded to on my podcast, and we're going to talk about that down the road, 2021's free agency class, very interesting. Now, most of the guys that I'm going to talk about, not going to make it to free agency. Jalen Ramsey isn't going to make it to free agency. The Rams are going to re-sign him. As long as he plays ball, stays healthy, and keeps his mouth shut in Los Angeles with the Rams, and there isn't a sideline blow up and he's not rubbing people the wrong way and ruffling feathers out there. If he's minding his P's and Q's, Y's and Z's outside in LA, he's going to be back. They didn't trade. Again, this is what you have to understand. Same thing with the Cowboys with Amari Cooper. You don't trade a first round pick for a guy with 2 years left on their deal just to let them walk away 2 years later. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. You trade a first round pick for a guy, it's because you view him as someone that's going to be around for a while. That's a guy that you've pegged as someone that can be a part of your long-term future. Same thing the Cowboys just did in locking up Amari Cooper. The Rams are going to do the same thing to Jalen Ramsey. They are not going to allow him to leave again, unless he is a distraction and a malcontent in that locker room like he was in Jacksonville. And if that's the case, why would you want him here in Washington? So I don't see any way that Jalen Ramsey, but I understand your sentiment. I understand your thought process. The Redskins, I don't necessarily know if it's for guys that are out there on other teams. It may be just to make sure that they've got plenty of bread in case a lot of these 1 and 2 year deals work out. You want to be able to pay some of these guys to keep them here. And then you got your own guys. You still haven't paid Brandon Sheriff a long-term deal. All right. Then you got the other guys that'll be up soon. Before you know it, Terry McLaurin, if he is what we think he is, he's a third round pick. So it's only 4 years. There's no 5th year option with him. And generally, you don't want to wait till a guy gets to the end of his contract. You try to sign him when he's going into the last year of his deal. So think about this with Terry. We're 2 years away, essentially. 1 season and then the next before we start negotiating potentially a long-term deal with Terry McLaurin. Jonathan Allen's deal is going to be up here shortly. You're going to have to make a decision on him. Before you know it, then Daron Payne's is same deal. So you want to be in a position to lock some of these guys up. And some of these 1-2 year deals, if they work out and they work in your favor, you got to be able to lock those guys up as well. So these 1 year deals are really putting the Redskins in a position to, I already showed you, I tweeted out. And if you're not following me, shame on you, at Louis T Network on Twitter. I tweeted out a retweet of an Albert Breer post that listed the top 10 teams in the league with cap space at this moment. And the Redskins are 8th with over $40 million worth of cap space. Obviously, that just went down with the signing of Ronald Darby, but not by a ton. They're still in the top 10. This is a team with some cap space and some cap flexibility moving forward. And again, when Trent Williams' situation is resolved, that's going to add another $12.5 million back to the cap. Who knows what happens with Ryan Kerrigan? They may restructure his deal, whether they extend him or if this is it, then you're talking about another $11 million coming off the books. Obviously, the Alex Smith situation next year is going to free up a little bit of cap space as well, so you'll get some cap relief. The Redskins are sitting pretty. If you're talking about a cap situation, the Redskins have put themselves in a position where they can go out, sign other teams' free agents if they like, and also retain their own, which is big as well. So, thank you for the super chat, Captain Gaming. Barrett Downing, my man BD, as always, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, BD, my man BD writes. Thanks for the update. Respect. As always, BD, you know I'm going to keep you guys in the loop. Most of you guys keep me in the loop. You know, things happen and you send them to me, whether it's on IG or it's on Twitter, but usually on socials, you guys are all over this stuff. You send it my way. If I don't already know about it, I will learn about it because you guys usually keep me in the loop. So thank you guys for all that you do. Let's see. We got another super chat here. This one from Malik Rose. Malik Rose, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciated, Malik Rose. Malik writes, do you believe that trading back in this year's draft is the best solution to filling holes along the offensive line and on the defensive side? No, I don't. If you're talking about number 2 specifically, Malik, no, that's not something that I want to even entertain. I'm listening, but I'm honestly, so I said that backwards. I hear teams, I'm not actually listening, okay? There's a difference between hearing. I can hear something audibly from 100 yards away. Am I actually listening? I can hear 2 people talking. Am I listening? Can I actually understand what is being said? No, 2 different things. All right. I hear all the discussion about the number 2 pick. I'm not actually listening because I don't care. I want to draft Chase Young. And again, it's a process. And this is why I keep talking about patience and preaching patience and talking about a process, because if you're looking to have a quick fix, if you're looking to turn this thing around immediately, then you trade number 2. If you understand that this is a process and you're looking at this big picture and you want to see this thing through and have the Redskins not just compete in 2020, but actually compete in 2022, 2023, 24, 25, and be, what the Seattle Seahawks were in the mid 2000s. All right. And into the early 2010s. All right. And be what some of these teams have been, where they're always around. No one's close to being the Patriots. I'm not going to even mention their name and talk about what they've done. Their dynasty was over a 2-decade span. All right. But there are other teams that were in the mix every single year and had a chance to win a chip. And that's what you want to be. You want to be one of those teams that has a chance. Realistically, you go into the season and you're not just blowing smoke. You realistically look at the roster and say, why can't it be us this year? We got a shot, legitimately. We should be able to come out of the NFC, not just the NFC East. I'm sick and tired of this team, us having this narrow focus of just trying to win the East. Half the time, the NFC East is trash any damn way. Look at last year. Had we been half decent, the fact that we were a 2-win team and we won 2 games in a row. You remember that little stretch we had where we beat Detroit and Carolina in consecutive weeks, and now all of a sudden Redskins fans started looking around? Oh shit, we're back in the divisional race. No, that's not what we're looking to do at 3-9. Okay, that's not what we're looking to do here. I'm trying to be a team that looks at the division and says, not only should we win the division, I'm looking to get home field advantage, and I'm looking to try to find a way to get to the Super Bowl and win it. And having short-term goals set is how you do that. You hit those short-term goals, and eventually you'll get to your big goal. All right? But if you try to hit the big goal right away and you skip steps, you're going to find yourself back where we've been for the last 2 decades, running in place. So I don't want to trade number 2 because what Chase Young could potentially be for this organization, we, again, understand. We haven't had one of these. All right. Since Robert Griffin III, flash in the pan in 2012, since Sean Taylor back in 05, 04, 05, 06. All right. We haven't had one of these. We don't have these very often. Don't give this away. So if you're talking about trading back later in the draft, maybe that's a possibility. depending on what you get for Trent. There was a rumor out there, and I don't believe this at all, but there was a rumor out there circulating that the Vikings were interested, and, they got an additional first. We're not getting that from them. So for those of you out there, I've had multiple tweets, hey, Vikings got 2 first rounders. They're not giving up a first round. They didn't trade Stephon Diggs to then give us that pick for a 31, 32-year-old Trent Williams. It's not what they did that trade for, okay? But, there's a second round pick potentially that could be had by the Vikings. You got 2 first. That second could be, they could view, because they're only way I feel like you're trading Trent Williams is if it's a team that feels like they're in win now mode. If you're the Miami Dolphins, it makes 0 sense to trade for Trent Williams. He's not going to fit in your timeline. Same thing I've said about us. If you believe in Ron's plan, then you understand that there's a time frame, there's a timeline that's set. And that's why I say a guy like Ryan Kerrigan doesn't necessarily fit in that time frame, but there is value to having some veterans, especially guys that are your own, and he's one of ours. That's why it's okay. But you don't go out and get guys that are up there in age, like someone's like, what about Malcolm Jenkins when he was available? Doesn't fit in our time frame. All right, Malcolm Jenkins is over 30 years old. He does not fit in a win now situation. That's where he's looking to be, a win now situation, which is why he went to New Orleans. They're looking to win right now. They got Drew Brees for another year. This is win or else for them. Whereas we're like, look, we're not winning for 2-3 years down the road. So again, I'm looking at the big picture. All right, macro approach. Chase Young helps me with that macro approach. You trade back, and now you're looking micro. Let's win this year. Let's fill all the holes we can. No, you'll fill those holes over time. All right? Rome wasn't built in a day. Not looking to build this roster in 1 year. I'm just looking to find pieces here and there. If I can plug, let's say we went into this offseason with seriously 8 holes on this roster. Big, gaping holes, 8 of them. If we fill 3 of them this year and we fill another 2 next year, we're that much closer. All right? And we keep everything else status quo and we didn't create any other holes and we filled 3 of them this offseason and we ended up filling another 2 or 3 next year, now we're that much closer to being where we need to be. So, thank you for the super chat, Malik Rose. Greatly appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat, Mark McCullough. Greatly appreciate contribution as well. Got another super chat from Colton Wheeler. Hey, man, really appreciate you, Colton. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much, Colton. Colton writes, Lou, I know you are hung up on drafting Chase, but is that because you don't see the value in trading back to someone like the Dolphins for 5-18 and their second, taking Simmons and a wide receiver or a tackle at 18? Is Chase that good? Yes, he is. So I see the value in it. Look, I'm not stupid, okay? I'm not dumb. I understand the value that number 2 holds. I understand what the Redskins may be able to gain from that pick. Now, again, trading back to number 5 doesn't guarantee you that you're getting Isaiah Simmons. It doesn't. And honestly, I think the Redskins would prefer Jeffrey Okudah than Simmons anyway. Personally, this is what I think. If they're not going to get Chase Young, I think the other guy that they want is a fellow Buckeye alum in Jeffrey Okudah. I think they feel like the cornerback position is the more dire need, whereas safety, not so much. And look, Isaiah Simmons can play some everywhere. He's one of those guys, almost like the NBA positionless basketball. He's one of those positionless football players. And there are more of those entering the league where you just like, look, just put him on the field somewhere. He'll figure it out. But he could go at 4 to the Giants. There's no telling that he'll be there for sure. But in any event, it doesn't matter whether the Redskins take Simmons or Okudah at 5 and then you get an offensive tackle, let's say at 18, or a receiver, as you mentioned. All of that stuff is irrelevant. Look, I understand the value in doing that. I do. I understand that. But the Redskins have a chance to do something that is game-changing. When you draft a guy like Chase Young, if he is what we think he is, if he is as advertised, which I contend he is, okay, if he is as advertised, what he could do for our defense is more than adding a tackle. It's more than adding a receiver or Isaiah Simmons. It's more than adding additional picks. Because what he can do is he can take the talent that we already have on this roster and make it better. How so? Because the focus will be on him, so much so that as he's wrecking shop, teams have to then change their game. We don't have a player that you have to game plan for. The teams that win in this league have guys that you got a game plan to stop. Those are the guys that change the way teams run their stuff. That's when you know you've got a transcendent player. When they've got to change the way that they operate based off of one player that you have on your team or two guys that you have on your team. They've got to account for that guy so much so that they've got to alter the things that they want to do. That's when you know you've got a guy that can make others around him better. Because so much focus is put on stopping that guy. Now, on the other side, Montez Sweat is getting one-on-one. We need him to win. Jonathan Allen is now getting one-on-ones. We need him to win. Deron Payne is now getting a one-on-one situation. Need him to win. Now other guys have an opportunity to get one-on-one matchups. Now they're not getting double-teamed. We'll go win. All right? Now that running back that they want to get out into the pass route, he's got to stay in and block. Now they got jet protection instead of a five-man protection because they need somebody to stay in and block or at least chip. Now he's getting into his route a little slower. Now that gives the backer a time to get out there and get to that one running back. Or that tight end that they love to get the football to. Instead of Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert being able to get into the pass route, they've got to stay in and help block or chip on Chase Young before they can get out to their route. Throws off the timing of the play a bit or gives Montez Sweat a chance to get to Carson Wentz that much faster. Because Ertz, who Wentz is looking for isn't out in the route yet. These are the things that happen when you add a Chase Young to the mix. That game that the Redskins would lose, 28-24, Redskins might win that game 24-20 because of Chase Young. All those games we've lost over the years because we couldn't get off the field on third down or we couldn't get that big stop late in the ball game. Remember those years with Kirk Cousins? Kirk runs a read option, pulls the football out, and runs for a 25-yard touchdown versus the Lions to give us a lead late in that ball game. And Matthew Stafford takes the goddamn football and rams it down our throat in less than a minute and scores a touchdown and we lose the damn game in Detroit. You remember that? Those kinds of games don't necessarily happen. I'm not saying he's going to always make the big sack. But more times than not, Von Miller makes the big play in Denver, okay? More times than not, Khalil Mack makes the big sack in Chicago. More times than not, J.J. Watt makes the big play when the big play needs to be made. Those guys change games. You draft Chase Young, and you could potentially be getting one of those types of players. You cannot pass up on that. Obviously, I see the value in trading back. But the value to me isn't greater than getting a guy like Chase Young. That's just my personal opinion. So thank you for the super chat, Colton Wheeler. Greatly appreciate your super chat, man. Thank you so much. OJ Turner. Thank you for the super chat, OJ Turner. Greatly appreciate it, Juice. My man OJ writes, what's good? Do you think we trade Trent for Anthony Harris and a pick or OJ Howard and a pick? Your thoughts? I don't think the Vikings are going to trade Anthony Harris and a pick. All right. If the Redskins want Trent Williams to be sent off, the Vikings valued Anthony Harris enough to slap the franchise tag on him. All right. So if I value a guy that highly, that I'm going to slap the franchise tag on him, and you're asking me to trade for Trent Williams, who's 32 years old, and Anthony Harris is probably 25, 26 years old, or 31, whatever Trent is at this point, or going to be before the season starts, 31, 32, whatever it is. I look at it as I'm not throwing in anything extra. This is a straight up deal. Now if the Redskins say, look, Anthony Harris is cool, but we want a fifth rounder as well. Maybe the Vikings say yes to that. I don't know if that's what has to happen to get the deal done, whatever. But bottom line is the Redskins just went out and got Sean Davis. I'm not saying he is the answer at the free safety position. You know how I feel about Anthony Harris, but I just don't know if the Redskins are in that frame of mind. Now, Anthony Harris fits in the time frame of Ron's plan. So in essence, I'd be fine with that. Will the Vikings, you guys keep asking, will the Vikings feel like that's good compensation? And don't forget, the Vikings are strapped for cash. Trent wants a new deal. Who's going to trade A young safety going into the prime of his career for a guy that's probably exiting his prime and wants to be paid big money. The Vikings aren't in a position financially to just be dealing out money to guys like Trent Williams. They're in win now mode, as I mentioned. Wherever Trent goes is most likely going to be to a team that feels like they can win next year. But the Vikings, I don't think, are looking to spend the kind of money that Trent's asking for. So I don't see that deal getting done. Now, O.J. Howard, on the other hand, that's pretty interesting because I think the Bucs are open to dealing him. You know, I think they're willing to part ways with an O.J. Howard. But again, do the Bucs have the kind of cash? They just gave Tom Brady essentially $60 million. It was a $50 million deal, but with incentives, that thing can get to $60 million, and he's probably going to hit those incentives. It's essentially a 2-year, $60 million deal. I can't see the Buccaneers coughing up the kind of cash that they've done in free agency. They've re-signed one of their players in JPP. They slapped the franchise tag on another one to stop him from leaving in Shaq Barrett. And then they gave Brady a ton of money. I don't see them trading for Trent Williams and then paying him a ton of money. I don't think they have a ton of money to spend on Trent Williams, to be honest with you. So I don't see that deal getting done. Again, you have to understand that it's not just about draft compensation or compensation in general with this deal. You also have to factor in that it's a 2-part deal. Redskins have to get the proper compensation. That team has to be willing to give up the proper compensation. But more importantly, Trent has to be able to be paid as well. And I think that's the hang-up with this thing. Isn't what the Redskins are necessarily asking for. It's what Trent wants to be paid, because the two are married together. Because Trent is asking for so much money, a team may be willing to pay that, but they're saying, if I got to pay him $19 million a year on this long-term deal, let's say it's 3 years, 19 per. All right, if I got to pay him that, then I can't give you a second-round pick too, dude. If I'm paying him that kind of money, you got to take this 4th-round pick. And the Redskins are like, no, it's not how this works. And the other team is like, yeah, it is how it works. Okay, I gotta trade for him and I gotta pay him. I'm not giving you a second-round pick to pay this man $57 million over 3 years. I'm not doing that. You can take this 4th. And the Redskins are like, well, then we just can't do it then. And they're like, okay, fine. Then we won't do it. So that's the problem. If Trent were asking for $15 million on a 3-year 45, you hear how different that sounds? Versus 57 over 3 years versus 45 over 3 years? Much more manageable. You're talking about $12 million difference. Much more manageable. So a team is looking like, look, if Trent's asking for 15 a year, I can stomach that and I can send you your second-round pick. But I can't stomach damn near 20 a year. I can't. And shelling out a second. So I don't see either one of those situations happening with the Redskins trade for a player and a pick with O.J. Howard in the Bucs or Anthony Harris in the Vikings. Thank you for your super chat, O.J. Turner. Derek B., thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciated, Derek B. My man Derek writes, Dunny and Darby equals same dude minus headache equals same amount of games. So essentially what he's saying is Dunny and Darby, same player. Essentially, you're getting the same amount of games. Dunny's missed a ton of games over the last few years. Same can be said for Ronald Darby. But he said minus the headache of Dunny. And look, let's not act like Dunny was this big malcontent. This was the first time we've heard Quentin Dunbar gripe about money. Now, he did a lot of griping in a short period of time. So I get the headache that existed with Quentin Dunbar. But let's not act like he was a malcontent in the locker room and that he was a cancer. He wanted to be paid. Simple as that. Ronald Darby hasn't necessarily been paid massive money, but he's been paid somewhat to this point. So it's a lot different when you haven't been paid real money. Quentin Dunbar hasn't been paid real money. He felt like he had some money coming to him with the old regime. They got ousted and then nothing. So I'm not here to defend Quentin Dunbar. He handled the situation poorly, and that's part of the reason he's no longer here. But I understand where you're coming from. And that was my big issue with adding a Ronald Darby, is the fact that guy hasn't played a ton of games, or hasn't played the games, amount of games you would have liked to have seen him play coming into this situation. But again, 1-year deal, low risk, high reward. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for the super chat, Derek B. Greatly appreciate that. Got another super chat. Let's see. This one from, hold on a second. Yep, this one from Rob U. Thank you for the super chat, Rob U. Greatly appreciate it. Rob writes, love the work you put in. Why didn't Skins pursue Carl Joseph? Too similar to Landon Collins. I don't know if he's too similar to Landon Collins. Landon Collins is a bigger, thicker, more physical safety than Carl Joseph is. Joseph, to me, is more of a free. Landon is more of a strong. But I think Carl Joseph... So I talked to a Raiders fan. One of my best friends is a Raiders fan. Massive Raiders fan. So I asked him about Carl Joseph because there were a lot of Redskins fans asking me about Carl Joseph. And so I remember Carl Joseph from West Virginia and how high I was on him coming out. There were some injury concerns with him coming into the league. Those injury concerns followed him into the league with the Raiders. Had some injuries. Also had some up and down play. But above all else, my friend told me this. He said, man, Carl Joseph is a solid football player. The biggest problem with him is he's too small, period. End of discussion. He said, in our division in the AFC West, there were so many big quality tight ends that would just go to work on him in coverage. And not for a lack of trying or a lack of athleticism, but simply put, this guy's 6'4", he's 5'11". There was nothing he could do about it when the football was put up in the air. Travis Kelce putting his nutsack on his helmet. Hunter Henry putting his nutsack on his helmet. Noah Fant putting his nutsack on his helmet. And there was nothing he could do about it. And so he said, look, if you can deal with that, everything else is really quality. But he's just small. So maybe he just didn't fit with what the Redskins were looking for. So there's that. I don't necessarily know if they were too similar to one another. Collins is more thickly built and more of a physical presence than that of Carl Joseph. But I just think that Carl Joseph, they decided to go in a different direction than Carl Joseph. So thank you for the super chat, Rob. You got another super chat. This one is from John Perez, my man JP. What's going on, JP? Thank you for the super chat. JP writes, I'm fine with the Darby addition. Plus, since we're getting Chase Young, we don't necessarily need world beaters at corner anyway. That's the prevailing thought, which is why I think it's even more reasonable to project Chase Young as the pick at 2, because you see what the Redskins are doing at the cornerback position. If you feel like you're not going after Chase Young and you feel like cornerback is a real liability, then you go and you spend the $15 million for James Bradbury. You go out and try to shore up what is a position of weakness right now because you're not sure if you're going to be able to get to the quarterback or not. Now, they may also feel like, look, changing the scheme to a base 4-3 and putting guys in better positions, more natural positions to what they were being asked to do in the previous regime is going to help get more pressure on the quarterback by itself. And that may be true. But at the end of the day, when you add a talent like Chase Young to what already is the strength of your football team, which is the front, front 4, really, you could argue front 7, depending on how they utilize these backers and who's actually playing linebacker. But at the end of the day, the front 4 is the strength of this football team right now. And adding to it, and Ron Rivera said it very eloquently, there's nothing wrong with making your strengths stronger, okay? A lot of times we think, well, we don't need that position. There's no such thing in the NFL. Other than quarterback and left tackle, you can use duplicates at every position other than those 2 positions, all right? There's no such thing as having too many edge rushers or too many interior defensive linemen or too many interior offensive linemen. There's no such thing as, man, we got too many receivers. We don't need another one. Bullshit. You can always use another. There's no such thing as having too many of anything in this league other than quarterback and left tackle. Other than that, you can make your strengths stronger. You can always use more. We watched the Giants in the mid to late 2000s do that and win 2 Super Bowls behind that in 07 and 11. by making their strength stronger. They just kept drafting D lineman after D lineman. You're like, man, they got Justin Tuck. What do they need Matthias Kiwanuka for? Why? Because we want to keep these guys coming at you in waves, and we'll move guys around. They already had Strahan, they already had Tuck, and they just kept going. And they got JPP, and they just kept going, and they just kept adding, and they just kept adding, and it helped them win. And that's what the Redskins are looking to do. Get beefy on that line and keep adding dudes. And don't forget, there's still a guy that we drafted in the 7th round out of Oklahoma State last year that I told you I liked, that was on injured reserve. If he's what I think he could potentially be, that adds another guy to the mix. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Thanks for the super chat, JP. Totally agree. Got another super chat from Farrah Cody. Thank you for the super chat, Farrah. Farrah Cody, appreciate that. Farrah writes, I seen Kerrigan make game-ending sacks for the win. They're rare, far and few between. Or few and far between, excuse me. They're very rare. And we've seen Kerrigan do that. We saw him do it against the Eagles back in, I want to say it was either 15 or 16. We've seen him do it before. I think he did it again against the Vikings, like 2017, something like that. We've seen him do it, but it doesn't happen enough. You know, elite edge rushers impact games multiple times in the same season. All right, and I know you're a massive Ryan Kerrigan fan. You talk about every time someone says something about Ryan Kerrigan, you jump to his aid. Look, Ryan Kerrigan has been a really good football player. He's been an Iron Man for the Redskins. All right? Love Ryan Kerrigan. But Ryan Kerrigan has never been elite in this league. Never. Never. Never has a defensive coordinator showed up and said, hey, we got to find a way to stop 91, man. We got to stop 91. I've seen guys block Ryan Kerrigan one-on-one way too often. You know, when Ryan has his best days, it's against backup tackles, similar to when Brian Orakpo was here. You could always count on Orakpo having 2 monster games. You know, if the Redskins played the Raiders, you know, and that would happen once every 4 years, and if the Redskins played the Rams, he knew he was going to eat up somebody's backup tackle. All right? Orakpo was going to put him down for 3 sacks this week versus the backup tackle. When Ryan Kerrigan would see Big V, his eyes would light up. Put Ryan down for 2.5 today because he's got Big V out there at right tackle. Oh, but when you threw him up against Jason Peters, crickets, silence. When you put him up against Tyron Smith, milk carton. Okay? Now we're hoping that against Tyron Smith and against the elite tackles in this league, we can put Chase Young across those guys and still get a victory every now and again. Look, those guys are elite for a reason. They get paid the big bucks for a reason because they're elite. But when you put elite against elite, that means that your guys should win some of the battles too. And Kerrigan didn't win enough of those. He won against subpar guys. He'd eat the Giants up because the Giants never had any tackles. He'd eat their ass for lunch. But when he go up against the Cowboys and Doug Free and those guys, he'd struggle. So, anyway, I digress. Thank you for the super chat, Farrah. Got another super chat. This one from Call It Like You See It. Appreciate the super chat. Call It Like You See It. Thank you so much for the super chat. Call It Like You See It writes, after we take Chase, of course, do we need to focus more on the offensive side of the ball, given all the defensive signings we've made in free agency? Appreciate all your hard work, homeboy, HTTR. So, with all the moves made defensively, should we focus more on the offensive side of the football in the draft after we draft Chase Young, number 2 overall? Great question. It's honestly what the board dictates. You know, you'd like to formulate a plan in your head that says, hey, we've made all these moves. The Redskins have signed 87 linebackers. They've signed 4 or 5 guys in the secondary. And so they've added a ton of guys on that side of the ball. Haven't spent a lot of time on the offensive side outside of tight end and adding in a little bit of depth along the offensive line. But for the most part, most of the moves have been made. And they you know, like I said, on the offensive line, tackle and Cornelius Lucas, guard and Wes Schweitzer, but and a bevy of tight ends have been signed and added to the mix. But they didn't do anything at I mean, if you want to count my man from the Giants as an addition at wide receiver, go right ahead. I already told you, as it happened live, He's more of a special teams addition, if you ask me. I don't see him coming in, Cody Latimer. I don't see him coming in here and lighting it up at receiver. I think I know what he is as a football player at this point of his career. And I told you, he was a instrumental part of the Giants special teams unit. He was a core contributor there. And that's what I think the Redskins see him as, like, hey, we're going to see what this guy has at receiver. But if nothing else, if all else fails, we know this guy can be a hell of a gunner on specials. So Redskins haven't done much on the offensive side. More so, they spend a lot of attention. But honestly, when you look at it, if you take a step back and look at all the signings, it's almost split. Now that I kind of think about it, Cody Latimer, Cornelius Lucas, Wes Schweitzer, that's 3 right there. I think they added at least 3 tight ends to the mix on the offensive side. None of them world beaters, okay? None of them potentially game changers, but at least 2 for sure. In Logan Thomas and Richard Rodgers. They may have added another one that I might be blanking on right now, but that's 5 guys on the offensive side. And then they made a bunch of moves defensively, about 7, I believe, 7 or 8 on the defensive side. A couple of guys back that were here last year, and Nate Orchard and John Bostic. And then the rest of those guys are from the outside coming in. So we'll see. But to answer your question, the draft is going to dictate what the Redskins do. Like, if let's say they don't acquire a second, for Trent, and let's just go with the way everything is right now as constructed. The Redskins don't have a 6th. The Redskins, don't have a second. The Redskins don't have a 6th, and then the Redskins do not have. That's the only 2 rounds they don't have a pick in. They've got a first. They've got 1/3. They've got 2 fourths. They've got a 5th, and they've got 2 7ths right now. So let's just say that you get chased in the first round, and then you get to the 3rd round, and you look at the draft the way it's unfolding. And I contend, and I've continued to contend this since we've started talking draft, that some good football players are going to fall, particularly at the receiver position. There's so many of them in this draft. It's loaded, which is why the wide receiver market has really been shunned this offseason. It's the reason why, outside of Amari Cooper, nobody's really scored a massive deal. We thought Robbie Anderson was going to get paid. He got a 2-year, $20 million deal. He had to settle for that because there wasn't a lot of money out. I thought Demarcus Robinson was going to get paid. He had to sign a 1-year deal. I think he went back to Kansas City on a 1-year deal. Geronimo Allison just signed a deal for less than $1 million to go to the Lions. Like, there isn't a lot of money out here for these receivers because the draft is so deep. Teams aren't willing to pay for these guys. This is the worst year for a free agent wide receiver because of what is to come in the draft. And so because of how deep it is, I think you're going to see a few guys that the Redskins have 2nd round grades on fall to the 3rd round, and they may be like, hey, we can't pass this up. Instead of them, looking at another position, or let's say that the Redskins have a safety valued extremely high. They got a late 1st round grade on him, and he's sitting there in the 3rd round. To hell with wide receiver. They may say to themselves, hey, there's still a bunch of receivers. We should be able to get one with one of our 4th round picks. But this safety has no business being here. We had a 1st round grade on him. We got to take him now. And even though you feel like they should be focusing on the tight end or the wide receiver position or left tackle at that point, someone on the offensive side of the football, they may see this value, and the draft is all about value. It's all about feeling like you got the most bang for your buck on these selections. You want to be able to look at your board and say, man, had a 1st round grade on this guy, got him in the 2nd, or got a 1st round grade on this guy, got him in the 3rd. That was a steal for us. We felt really good about this selection. Hell, we're in the 5th round, and we got a guy that we had a late 3rd, early 4th round grade on. He's sitting here back into the 5th, where we sit with this Seattle pick, and we couldn't believe he was still there. We even thought about trading up to get him in the early portion of the 5th, and he was still there at the late end of the 5th, and we feel like we got a steal. And so the board is going to determine what the Redskins do. Theoretically, yes, I would like the Redskins to go after tight end or wide receiver, add some more weaponry for Dwayne, or more protection for him at left tackle if a guy you value is still there. But truth of the matter is, whatever the Redskins deem to be the best value in the 3rd round into the 4th round with their 2 picks there, do it. If you feel like the best value is packaging up both of your 4s to go into the end of the 3rd, knock yourself out. Do what you feel like you need to do to get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. So thank you for the super chat. Call it like you see it. I think the Redskins are going to just go off of the board. Would I prefer them to go offensive? Sure. Absolutely. More weaponry for Dwayne is what I've been saying all along. But look, if they got a high grade on a guy and he's sitting there and they didn't think he would be there at that point and they pull the trigger on him, I have no problems with that whatsoever. Once again, thank you for the super chat. Call it like you see it. Got some more super chats. Want to knock these down. Next one is from OJ Turner. Double up. From my man Juice. Appreciate the super chat, OJ, who writes, Damarius Randall is a free agent. Your thoughts? I've talked about this, I think, even on the program on Wednesday. Not a fan of Damarius Randall. Now, I know there's been a lot of chatter between Redskins fans and an actual Redskins player in Landon Collins trying to recruit him here, him even saying, I'm on my way. But again, there is baggage that comes with Damarius Randall. There's a reason why he doesn't stay in one place for too long. He's high maintenance. In league circles, that's what he's been labeled as, high maintenance. And so, again, when you're trying to build a culture, I don't necessarily love his game either, even though he does offer versatility. I don't necessarily love his game. But for me to not love your game and you potentially being a distraction in the locker room with a coach that's trying to change the culture, I just don't think that kind of fits into what Ron Rivera wants to do. So I don't see Damarius Randall as a target at this time. And I'm not the biggest Damarius Randall fan to begin with anyway. So while he may be a guy the Redskins target, maybe, after the draft, they don't land the safety that they were looking for and they want to provide themselves with more depth, and he's still out there. And now, because you're getting late into the game, he may realize, hey, I need to find a way onto one of these rosters. And so maybe a deal that he wasn't willing to take earlier in free agency, he may be willing to take a little bit later on in free agency. And maybe he's here on a 1 year, $4 million deal like the Redskins have been signing these players to. So we'll see what happens. But I don't like Damarius Randall, and we'll see where he ends up. Got another super chat. This one from Hey E, New Money Boys. Appreciate the super chat. Hey E, greatly appreciated. Hey E writes, who starts at the other corner, Fabian or Darby? You're assuming, so we'll go with your assumption first, that Kendall Fuller is starting at one of the other cornerback spot. So in that particular instance, I think it'd just be the best man wins. You go into competition in the camp and you see which one outperforms the other. I'd put, if Darby's healthy, I'd put my money on him personally, outperforming Fabian Moreau. But you never know. For me, I think all three of those guys are going to be on the field at the same time because I think Kendall Fuller is going to be the Redskins nickel. So I think, Kendall Fuller can play out wide, and they may play him out wide and in the nickel, but I think he's going to probably make more of a living in the nickel than he is outside, which is why you add a guy like Darby, if you ask me. But if we're going under the assumption that you made, which is Kendall Fuller is starting at one cornerback spot, I'd say Darby's going to end up being the starter opposite of Fuller. But I contend, and I'm going to continue to repeat this, that Fuller's going to be in the nickel, in the slot, and you're going to have Fab on one side and Darby on the other. All three of those guys are going to be on the field a ton, regardless of who starts, to be honest with you. As many 3 and 4 wide receiver sets as we see in this league, these guys are all going to be on the field a ton anyway. So the moniker of starter is really of no, consequence once you kind of get into the game. You after the game's over and you start looking at snap counts, but all these guys are going to probably be in the general same vicinity when it's all said and done. So thank you for the super chat. Hey E, New Money Boys. Got another super chat from Extra Squaw. Appreciate the super chat, Extra Squaw. Greatly appreciate that. Extra writes, did you see Reuben Foster running video? I know how you feel about him, but he has been quiet, and I feel like when healthy, he's special. Thoughts? No, haven't seen the video of him running. I try to stay away from that kind of stuff. It can be misleading. I remember last year, Darius Geis had gotten injured, and then he posted a video right away to kind of dispel the notion that he was hurt. And it was an old video. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how recent these videos are. You can take a video from before he tore his Achilles or his ACL, whatever it was. I forget now. It's been so long. And post that video. I'm not saying that's what happened, but social media, people can portray what they want to portray out to the masses, and if you're not careful, they can reel you in hook, line, sinker. So I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. At this point, he probably should be running by now, though. I mean, we're almost approaching a year to when this injury took place, so he should be running now. And I wish him nothing but the best. I told you, the guy is uber talented. There's a reason the Redskins wanted him in the first round, the year he was drafted back in, 2017, I believe. And the Redskins thought about going back into the first round, but the 49ers ultimately made that move. And the Redskins considered him with their first round pick, but instead took Jonathan Allen, which was the right move to make. So at the end of the day, Reuben Foster, super talented football player, had some issues off the field, has had issues on the field staying healthy. It's not just the off the field stuff that comes with Reuben Foster. It's also his inability to stay healthy as well throughout his career. And remember, that was one of the issues with him coming into the draft, if you remember, that he was supposed to have an issue with a stinger in his neck and his shoulder. And, how was that going to play out long term for his career? And that was something else teams had an issue with him with. So, he's got to stay healthy, number one. And number two, he's got to keep his nose clean off the field. He's done that to this point. I'm happy for that. More so than him being healthy, I want him to get his life together. And it seems like that may be trending in the right direction. And if so, good for him. And now you start looking at, all right, can he stay healthy and can he contribute? I want to see this guy win. And I want to see him win here in Washington. So I'm rooting for him. But he's got to do his part. So, no, I didn't see the video of him running. He should be running right about now. And hopefully he can stay healthy, get back to the football that he was playing that netted him a first-round selection some 3-4 years ago in the draft. And then, we'll go from there, So let's see what happens with Reuben Foster. Double up, for my man Hate E, who changed his name mid-video, okay? Hate E said, I took the new Money Boys off. So Hate E back like cook crack. Thank you for the super chat for the second time, Hate E. He says, I took the new Money Boys off. He says, Haskins will be great. I don't know about him being great or not. He has the potential to be great. I'm rooting for him. I'm a Haskins fan now. I was not initially. If you remember, when he was coming into the league, I was not the biggest Haskins fan. I thought there were 3 other quarterbacks that were better than him in that particular draft. But after seeing him play, after seeing what this guy is capable of and seeing some of the things that I didn't think he possessed, seeing that firsthand, like athleticism and pocket mobility, I'm a Haskins fan, and I want to see this guy win. And just like I said with Reuben Foster, not only do I want to see him win, I want to see him win here. I want to see him shut up the naysayers. I want to see him shut up all the doubters, all the people, including Redskins fans, that don't think that this guy can start in this league. There have been so many people that have had opinions, ex-Redskins, that don't think this guy can get it done and isn't a franchise quarterback. I want him to put a muzzle on every single one of the people that doubted this kid and said that he couldn't do it. And I want him to do it here in a Redskins uniform. And I want him to solve what has been a big issue for the Redskins probably for the last 3 decades, which is that of franchise quarterback. We haven't had one. The last one we had, we ran him off in free agency in Kirk. And I know you guys don't like me talking about Kirk. I don't give a shit about that. I'm going to talk about Kirk because he should still be here. But he's not. All right. But then Robert Griffin III looked like he had promise. He self-destructed. All right, that thing imploded as fast as it was a shooting star. As fast as it came, as beautiful as it was, it exploded just as fast, and it was just as much carnage as it was beautiful. And so that didn't last very long. And then you go through all of the Redskin quarterbacks in the graveyard, man. And we have been searching for a franchise guy. We haven't had one in quite some time. Really, you probably got to go all the way back to Joe Theismann. Last time the Redskins had a true franchise quarterback. You could argue Mark Ripken was, but Ripken was looking for money and the Redskins didn't want to give it to him either. And he didn't stay here as long as he probably should have. But that's nor here nor there. The fact of the matter is, and I said all of that to say this, we haven't had a true franchise quarterback in ages. And we've had a ton of guys come through here. We let's hope that Haskins puts all that to bed and gives us the franchise quarterback that we've longed for countless decades now. So thank you for the super chat. Hey, E. Greatly appreciate that. Evan Higgins, thank you for the super chat, Evan. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Evan. Evan writes, keep up the great work. Indeed, Evan. Indeed. Thank you for the super chat. Got another super chat. This one from my man BD Barrett Downing. Double up. For my man BD. Thank you for the super chat, BD. My man Barrett writes, in your opinion, who wins the openings at tight end since it's wide open? I don't think the Redskins are done at tight end. I think they're going to draft a tight end. That being said, I think that you can't discount the guys that are on the roster in Jeremy Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me. And Hale Henches. I think they're in the mix, along with the guys that have been signed, and Richard Rodgers, and the ex-Virginia Tech, Buffalo Bill, Buffalo Bill, Detroit Lion tight end. I always forget his name. I'll know it sometimes and then I'll forget it. But all of those guys are going to get a chance to compete. And I think no one really has the leg up on anyone because all of these guys are new to this system. It'd be one thing if you had the same offensive coordinator or the same coach coming back, then you would have to give Sprinkle and Hale Henches the nod over some of these other guys, but they're entering the fray along with all the other guys. And I know someone brought up ex-Ohio State tight end, so we'll throw him in the mix as well. Everybody's learning a new system. Everybody's learning on the fly. So it's really hard to project a winner. But again, you asked, so I'll give you a couple of names. I think your TE1 will ultimately be, I assume they're going to draft someone, and that guy has just as much chance to be TE1 week one as any of the guys they've brought in. But right now, I think TE1 is going to end up being Jeremy Sprinkle. If you put a gun to my head and said, hey, answer the question, Jeremy Sprinkle would be TE1. I think TE2 is Richard Rodgers. And I think TE3 ends up being the ex-Virginia Tech, Buffalo Bill, Detroit Lion product. And I think those are your three tight ends going into the season. And I think Hale Henches is still eligible for the practice squad. So I think you'd see a guy like Hale Henches stored away on the practice squad if at all possible, if he doesn't get an opportunity elsewhere. I think that's how this would go, to be honest. So that's how I would see it going right now. But if they draft somebody, and I anticipate that taking place, I see whomever they draft being TE1 or TE2. And then that's going to bump down a Richard Rodgers or someone like that, potentially. You know what I mean? So obviously camp and the preseason is going to determine the outcome of that. But, that's how I would see it right now. I see Sprinkle being the guy right now as the leader in the clubhouse. It's his job to lose. And if he allows someone else to come in and take his job, then so be it. So, anyway. All right. So, see if we got any more super chats. Get this quick look. No, we're all out of super chats. So once again, Ronald Darby signed on a 1-year, $4 million deal to be a cornerback in the mix for the Redskins. Low risk, high reward proposition. I have no issues whatsoever, no qualms about this move. Actually like this move because of the low risk involved. If he continues down the path he was on prior to coming here, which is injuries and missing games, it could be a one and done situation for Ronald Darby in DC. If he is able to show us the talent that we know he possesses and able to do that while playing in 15 games, 16 games, somewhere in that 14 games, somewhere in that mix, and performs at a high level for us, he may be back, after this year. The Redskins may feel like this is a guy we got to bring back. So throw another name into the pot And as I've talked about, with Ron's plan, throw all those names in the pot, stir it up, get a spoon, dip it in, scoop out as many guys as possible. And you could look at it one of two ways. Either you have that pot and you pour it into a strainer, and the guys that fall through, they're gone. And the guys that remain in that bowl, that strainer, they're going to remain Redskins and move forward with Ron's plan. Or you could look at it as you stir up that pot with all those names in there. You take a spoon out, and the guys that are on that spoon are the guys that are going to keep moving forward. So that's going to do it for your man Louis T here. Thank you guys for joining me on this impromptu live Redskins video. I told you, anything that happens noteworthy with the Redskins, you're going to see my face invading your space. And so the Redskins make a massive move. Well, not massive, but in terms of the roster, this was a necessary evil. We needed to add some more depth at the cornerback position. It was not comfortable looking at what we had at that position right now. And adding Darby puts us somewhat at ease. They're still going to attack the cornerback position via the draft, I believe. And they may ultimately go after multiple guys. Remember, Fab Moreau is coming up on the last year of his deal, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's been here. This would be his fourth season. I could be wrong. This could be his third season. I feel like this is his fourth season. So it wouldn't shock me if they went after two corners in this draft. It really wouldn't. So, and remember, all of these deals, for the most part, Darby's deal, 1 year deal. So you could possibly see more turnover at the cornerback position next year. So if they went after two young guys, would not shock me in the least bit. Anyway, make sure you like this video. Subscribe to the Louis T Network if you haven't already done so. Make sure you check out the Louis T Network podcast. Brand new episode out. I told you, had some Redskins stuff in there. Talk more Redskins on this podcast than I generally do because I do so much Redskins content. I try not to overload my podcast with it, but I did have some Redskins content on the podcast, so make sure you check out the Louis T Network podcast, available wherever you get a podcast. All right, Apple Podcasts, Google Music Play, TuneIn, Spotify. Anywhere you can get a podcast, tune in. You can get it on the Louis T Network podcast there as well. I am a Redskins fan etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. As always, stay safe. We will reconvene either before Wednesday. If not, we'll be live on Wednesday night. Until then, you guys, take care. Have a good one.